don't just read business books. Read everything. If you're a copywriter and you don't read fiction, you're missing the boat, because fiction tells you how people think and feel and speak. So I am constantly reading, I'm constantly writing, and then those are the major ones. Write every day, read all the time. And the third one is study copywriting. Become a student of copywriting. I don't mean just reading copy you get, but take a course. Today, that's the one advantage people really do have today. There's so much more education out there, more easily accessible.
Hey, this is Alex Cleanthous from the Growth Manifesto Podcast, and today we're talking with Bob Bly, who's the author of the Copywriter's Handbook, who's one of the best direct response marketers of all time. He's been writing copy for more than 50 years and is one of the people who I've learned from over the last 30 or so years in copywriting. And we talk about how to write copy, how to understand an audience, how to research an audience, how to find good copywriters, the process of copywriting, how to become a great copywriter, how to find good copywriters, and everything in between. If you're a marketer, an entrepreneur, or a copywriter, and you want to become exceptional in your field, highly recommend that you watch this episode. I'd also like to ask you a favor, and that's to hit the like button and the share button. We put a lot of time into producing the very best content that we can, and we want to get this content in front of as many people as possible. So I would really appreciate if you hit the like and the share button. Otherwise, I hope you enjoy this episode. Let's get into it. Let me start with this question. Yeah. So what is copywriting?
Well, copywriting is writing material that's either print, digital, broadcast, audio, that either sells or helps sell a product or service.
So I learned about copywriting early on in my career, right? I thought to myself, I need to make some money. And I started all the learning. I learned I started in sales, and then I learned some marketing. And then I think it was only at the time that I got to copywriting that I truly understood how to market and how to sell people, because the power of taking some words, the right combination of words can get people to take action en masse, right? And so I thought that was really the exciting thing about copywriting, was that at the core of every piece of marketing and sales and communication, there's words. And I guess if somebody actually understands how to construct those words in a certain way, that can enforce action. Yeah, that can get people just to take action. And I thought that was a really interesting perspective, right? Because everybody essentially thinks of all of the tactics around marketing, but they don't really think about the words as much as they should. So how important are the words from your perspective?
We have been believed, and we think we've shown, we and my people of my ilk. I'm a senior, and so I've been doing this for almost half a century, for 45 years. And we always believed that the words were an extremely important element. We didn't say copy was the most important element. When we first started, before the digital, our primary communication medium, although there were others, was direct mail. So is copy the most important part of direct mail? It's very important, but also important was the list, which means targeting the audience and the product and the offer. So I would say the most important elements are what you're selling, who you're selling it to, what the offer is, and then how you're reaching them, and also the copy, the words. What we used to say, though, in direct mail, people would say, well, the list is more important. We'd say, yeah, but it's easy enough to find the right list. It takes a little trial and error, but once you do and you know what it is, boom, you're done. You know the list. But therefore, the leverage was always in the copyright. You could always use different copy to boost your gross response rate, ROI, whatever metric you were measuring. So in that sense, you could argue it's the most important, but it certainly is extremely important and remains so today.
Yeah, okay. So let me separate out the things that I just heard you say. So let's start with the audience, right? How do you identify a good audience to construct the copy around? How do you identify the audience first?
There's different ways to say that. Do you know who? You probably do. Do you know the name Gary Halbert?
Of course, like he's a great,
So,
he's a legend.
so he said the secret to success in marketing is audience. And by that, he meant don't market to the masses, market to the starving crowds, the people who are begging, dying, pleading, desperate to own what you are offering. So that, for example, in the back in the day, when I was primarily a direct mail copywriter, I'd occasionally get a call like this. Hey, we need someone to write a mailing to sell our, let's say it was Omaha steaks, our new gourmet steaks. And here's our idea. We want you to write a letter that we're going to send to people to convince them that steak is good and you should eat it. And ours is the best. No, you don't do that. I said, what are we going to rent the Vegetarian Times subscriber list and say you should be eating meat? You want to rent the meat, the barbecue magazine list. You want to sell to people who already want what you're selling, and therefore just convince them that yours is better than your competition's. So your audience is people who already want, need, desire what you're selling, not to convince them to do it.
So it's not the convincing them to do it. Although I did see a few of the Gary Halbert examples, right? Like the sales letters that kind of he did like all the way back when, and he had a strong skill of selling people who didn't even kind of know that they had a problem until he agitated the problem, right? So part one is that, so if you find a starving audience, that's fantastic, right? But the other one is that he manages to find a pain point that you didn't know, so he can introduce an idea to someone who wasn't thinking about it and then get them to really want it and then get them to take action on that thing because of the offer, right? So how does that adapt a little bit, right? Because yes, it's good to go after a starving kind of crowd, but there's also this thing where you can introduce an idea and create the desire and make them a starving crowd almost. Like I saw some examples of that.
Did you personally, I'm just asking, did you know him and have a relationship with him at all?
Not personally, no, but I kind of had a look at all of his content.
Yeah,
I didn't know him.
I didn't know him well, but I did know him. And I asked him a similar question. He said, you want to sell to people who are starving. What you're describing is simply, you have to make them aware that they are starving.
That's a good one.
And the term I use for that, and I think maybe it was his term, problem agitation. Poking the needle into the sore, so to speak.
What do you think are the triggers that have the biggest impact in making somebody take action? Yes, what is like the hot buttons or like the areas that someone's like, oh, you got me. And I didn't even know that I had it. Yeah, but yes.
There are many lists available, and I can, point your audience to links of them and sources. But did you know also the copywriter Herschel Gordon Lewis?
I didn't know that guy. No.
Yes. So he's a friend, sort of Halbert's contemporary age-wise. And he said his was the easiest to remember. He felt that the 4 big triggers were greed, guilt, fear, and exclusivity. And I think there are many lists, but that's an easy to remember, good starting one. Greed, guilt, fear, and exclusivity. There are many beyond that. But that's probably the top 4.
So we take those 4 triggers and then do we overlay the Eugene Schwartz what's the thing the sophistication of the market, how
absolutely
solution aware or problem aware and so on. And so we're basically combining the levels of kind of maturation of like a market and the 4 kind of pain points. Is that right?
Yes, it's the simplest way to describe Schwartz is knowing your audience. And he was the first to point out you have to know where they are. Today they use this term that I don't like, the buying journey, the customer journey. But that's what he would, today they have all these new bright shiny objects. They're not new, they just give them fancy names. So Eugene Schwartz said you have to take them where they are. So if I'm writing let's say an ad for a piece of software that I did recently that prevents a problem with large computer systems, first thing I ask is the client, do they already know that they have this problem going in their data center? Or is it going on without them being aware, and that we have to make them aware? Where are they in that? If they already know they have it, are they already searching for a solution? Do they know there's a solution? Do they know there are many solutions? And therefore, what we have to do is say, they know, they've heard of us, they've heard of A, they've heard of B. Do we have to say, this is why you need us versus the other ones? So Schwartz is good. I've always meant to, this is in his, I know this is in Breakthrough Advertising, he lays this out, which is a great book. And I always meant to, and maybe I did at some point, but I don't have it handy. I should make it prominent. I should put together a sort of a pyramid or chart that shows the levels of awareness, Eugene Schwartz's levels of awareness, you know.
The levels of awareness. Yeah, that's what it's called, isn't it? Yeah, it's called the levels of awareness.
That is what he called it. And it's the lowest level is, I think, you have a problem, but you don't know you have a problem. The next up is you have a problem, but you don't know how bad it is. The other next level, I forget, and I'm not quoting it exactly, is you have a problem, and you know that it's bad, but you don't know that it can be solved. And it goes up from there. Now I'm making a note for myself. I'm going to put this together, and when I do it, I have your email. I'll send it to you because I got to put this up on my site. It's a very good thing, or I'll make a video of it. People, it's forgotten today, and the reason it's forgotten is Breakthrough Advertising, which is a great book, is a difficult book to read versus a lot of other.
I love that book. I thought it was the best book. I think I read that book three times.
I think it's a great book, but most people find it very difficult. And it's not as simplistic as some of the other ones, and they don't grasp it.
Well, there's two books I would recommend. I would recommend that book from Eugene Schwartz, and I would recommend kind of this book from Bob Bly. Yes, the Copywriter's Handbook.
It's not as good.
No, but this is a really good book, right? So this is like a really good book to give you basically all the concepts of copywriting, right? In kind of a single kind of area. I quite like that because it was a summary of all of the education I would ever done. And I was like, oh, this is a really good book. And this is a book I get just for my team. So I get them the two books. I actually to kind of get them the Eugene Schwartz book as well, because when you understand the levels of awareness, that's the most important thing before you start to write copy, right? And that applies across kind of all of the meta ads that we write, the Google ads that we write. The levels of awareness is such an impactful kind of concept to even understand the hook which you have to start with, or the education, or the hurdle that they have to get past to basically say, oh yeah, cool, I'm interested in this product. So I think it's a great starting point for understanding the market.
And what it addresses, there's an expression, you've probably heard it. I think Rosser Reeves said it first. Clayton Makepeace said it. You have to enter into the prospect's mind and engage him with the conversation he's already having with himself about his problem and your product, which is levels of awareness. And he said the conversation that he's already having in his own mind. Schwartz quantified it more so with the dividing the levels and defining them.
So understanding the audience is like critically important to be able to craft copy that talks to what their problem is, right? And we spoke about the levels of awareness. What are the other things that you do to understand an audience before you start the copywriting kind of process itself?
There's to understand the audience.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. How do you understand the audience? So say, for example, kind of that example which you gave earlier, right? That sounds very technical, actually understanding about kind of the security of data centers, right? Like, I'm sure that wasn't kind of the thing which you learned kind of 30 years ago, right? So how do you get into the mind of the consumer to understand how to write copy?
You're not going to like my answer. I cheat. I write copy basically in select areas. So I'm not reinventing the wheel each time. I do a lot of, for example, the areas that I niche or specialize in, I do a ton of investment and financial services copy. Stock market advisories, stock market newsletters, options trading courses and services. So if you work in the same areas, and another area that I do a lot of work in, and I'm not the only one, is alternative health, dietary supplements. So when you work in a few areas, you live in them and you get to know them over time. So you know what people are reading, what they're what they're interested in, what their awareness is, what their concerns are. I mean, if you want to get deeper, there's ways to dive more deeply.
How would you recommend copywriters or marketers who don't understand an area and who now need to write copy for the meta ads or for an e-commerce site or for a personal trainer or for whoever it is, right? What advice would you give them to learn about their audience a bit more?
There's lots of different answers, and I keep asking you, do you know this, that? Do you know who Mark Ford is from Agora Publishing?
I know Agora Publishing. I don't know Mark Ford's name.
Yeah, so Mark Ford and Bill Bonner are the kings there. So Mark has been teaching this for years. He and Bill are tops in the fields. And people will say, well, how do you know what your prospect, they sell financial investment newsletters, stock market newsletters. Well, how do you know what people are thinking? He says, buy your competitors' products. So if you're going to work in financial newsletters, subscribe to some of them, pay for them. You will get, then it was paper direct mail. Now it's mostly digital. You'll get endless, multiple promotions, and you study them like they're your graduate level school. Before the internet, we would study direct mails that we got from these companies, and we called it your marketing university in a mailbox. You study what's called, and you've heard this term, you study the controls. You look at what's working now, and that's the best way. And what you do when you're looking at all these things in your inbox, postal box, email, what you do is you look at the ones that you're getting repeatedly, because they are the ones that are working. If they were failing, they wouldn't keep emailing them or mailing them. And they are what we call controls, repeated promotions. And those are the ones you study, and they're more valuable than the golden fork knocks to you as a marketer.
And I would say like another kind of a quick suggestion here just for the audience is if you go into the meta ads library and if you look at the oldest ads that are running are the winners. Yeah, so they're the ones that have been successful over time, and that's why they're still live, right? The new ones, be careful of, because they might look nice, but they haven't confirmed that they can beat the control yet. Yes, meta ads kind of library, having a look at kind of some of the older ads is a great way to see some of the winners.
You are 100% correct in that. I couldn't have said it better. No need to elaborate. You're right.
Thank you so much. How important are customer interviews? It's like that thing that Henry Ford said, right? If I asked the consumer exactly what they want, they would want kind of faster horses, right? But instead, so he made kind of the automobile. So how much is it understanding the customer, but also predicting the thing that the customer actually kind of would want if they understood the offer or, yeah.
There are multiple answers to that. One of them I'll give you is this: if you're going to work heavily in a particular niche or market, become part of that market. For example, if you're going to be a copywriter in the let me pick a good example. If you're going to become a copywriter in the computer market, at one point I started out writing. I'm an engineer by education. I'm a chemical engineer, and most of my clients were chemical companies. But when the computers came up, I said, hey, it's more of the business is shifted toward IT. How am I going to learn that? I became a certified IT professional. I participated in my market. I went to software trade shows and computer trade shows. I joined a couple of computer associations and went to the meetings. So you can become an active participant in the market, and that's one way to really dive deeper into what you're doing. Now, in terms of talking to customers, this is interesting. People always said our focus groups. You know what a focus group is, of course, right? Our focus group's worthwhile, and people used to say, no, they aren't, because or yes, they are. And focus groups are not useful at telling you whether someone's going to buy a product. And I'll tell you why. Once I went to a focus group to participate. They didn't know I was in advertising. They invited me, said, this sounds like fun. So I went, and it was for a luxury car. And there was a bunch of people in a room, and they said, they put up the car, and it's a really expensive car. And they said to us, would you buy that car? So the guy next to me goes, of course I would. I looked at him. He was like, his clothes were in tatters. He couldn't afford that card. But he said yes, because he wasn't going to admit to the rest of us we couldn't. And then the guy next to him, who was wearing like a hobo outfit, said, oh, I'd buy that car. So, it doesn't tell you anything. But what focus groups do teach you about, and it's the same with talking to customers, not what they'll buy, but how they talk about the products category and how they talk about the problems they have. There's a famous story that there was you may not remember this. I don't think you're old enough. There was a TV commercial for Wesson Oil with a woman named Florence Henderson, an actress. And it was about Wessonality. And the commercial showed that if you cooked your fried chicken in Wesson oil in a pan and then poured it back in the cup, you got all the oil back except 1 teaspoon. It didn't absorb the oil. It cooked it, but didn't absorb it. And where did the copywriter get that? From a focus group. Someone had just made a comment. He was reading a focus group transcript. And the woman said, and you know what? After I fry the chicken, it doesn't taste greasy. And I actually noticed I poured it back in the cup and it all came back except a little bit. So you hear how people think and talk about your product. You won't get that. That's something you'll only get by talking with people generally.
Understood. But there's a combination of, I guess, understanding the customer, but also predicting if something is going to solve a problem that the customer has. Like it's that kind of combination thing. Because some of the things that, say for example, the Gary Halbert example just from before, right? He found the starving crowd, but they didn't know they were starving. So it's almost like kind of just knowing, like say for example, Henry Ford, right? It was the first automobile kind of for the masses. He didn't know that they actually kind of wanted it because they didn't know yet, but he knew that it solved a problem that they didn't know that they had, right? And so I think it's a combination of kind of understanding problems that they already have and predicting the problems that they are not aware of yet, and experimenting, I guess. And I think especially in the digital space, easier to experiment in terms of hooks and angles and messages.
Well, that's to get some insights, right? Now you've hit it. You use the term experimenting. I would use the word testing. We always say, people call me, hey, I have this idea. Would this work? I said, you don't know. I don't know. We won't know until we test it. There's no sense in arguing. Claude Hopkins in Scientific Advertising said advertising problems and questions are not resolved sitting around a conference table and arguing. They're resolved by testing. And back in the day when it was just print, A/B split, and now it's multivariate testing. So it's quicker and easier, but it's the same thing. And the people who do the most testing are usually the most successful. That's why a lot of the big digital marketers, the Motley Fool, for example, is very successful. They have such a huge audience and they do so much. They test constantly and massively. And that's how the
Motley Fool has got some good sales copy. Like, I think that's just one of the only recent examples I can remember where long copy still works well. I'm sure there are others, but I've noticed that over the years, copywriting is still super important, and all of the thinking and all of the principles are the same, but the length of copy has shortened and the number of touches seems to have expanded. Is that what you're seeing as well? And how have you seen kind of the copywriting kind of landscape shift over the last 20 or so kind of years since the advent of the internet, and then in the last 5 years since all this kind of social media short content is really starting to take off? Yes. How have you seen the market kind of shifting?
Well, that is a big question that has a large answer that we could discuss for an hour and 45 minutes and not get through it. But let's
give it a go at like the first part of it, right? Let's see if we can get it.
First part is this: the reason copy can be shorter on the internet versus print. And back in the old days, we would do a direct mail package, and we send out, for let's say a health product, and it'd be like a magalog or a letter, and it'd be 20 pages, because it was one thing. We had to tell them everything we needed to tell them to get them to buy it. But now we don't do that. We can send out an email that just teases them in a paragraph, and then that gets them to a video sales letter. So the copy is broken up into components. So it's not that there's less copy, although there may be, but it's divided into pieces and parts, versus back in the day, it had to be all in one bundle because you only had one shop.
So I think that's a really good perspective. It's the same amount of copy, but it's split up like over a number of touches potentially, right?
Exactly. And that's very much the case in B2B. The people again talk about the customer journey, the buyer journey, and business prospects, especially in B2B at the small to medium-sized businesses, larger companies, they're digesting information in bite-sized chunks. I'll read some blog posts. I'll download a white paper. I'll go on a webinar. So it's just as much information, but instead of having it all in one place, it's being doled out, being spoon-fed to the prospect in bite-sized chunks.
And is education still the strongest way to communicate through copywriting? Kind of just educating them, and then is that the best way to approach it still?
I don't like to use the word best, but let's say this. Education is incredibly powerful. People want, especially today, we consume information. So serious buyers, people who are not just looking at it for entertainment, but who really have a problem and really need to acquire a product, they do want to be educated. That being said, there are other powerful appeals. Sometimes it's more it's not either or, it's both. Also an emotional component, because at the end of the day, education, as good as it is often a logical appeal, and emotion always trumps logic. Consumers basically buy based on emotion and then rationalize their buying decision based on logic.
So is good copy then a combination of the two, where it's disguised in education, but it is hitting all of the emotional hot buttons? Is that a kind of good way to think about it?
Yes. And sometimes we tend more to lead with emotion, but sometimes we do lead with education, information, or news. Information that they don't know or they should know but don't know, you can consider news. So I remember there's an ad. We use the old term mail order, a print ad that ran in years ago, and it was for for I forget, it was a salon or a hair product to help give you thicker hair, and it was for women, and the headline was "Important News for Women with Thinning Hair." It was news, and it ran over and over and over again. So it was education.
So there's a hook in there. There's understanding the market awareness and who you're talking to. There's calling out prospect, and there's kind of naming the problem, right? And so, and all that is in kind of one headline, basically, right?
But there's multiple approaches. There's another way is to identify the problem or the prospect herself or himself in the headline. There's a very famous, again, it's a print magazine ad years ago. There was a correspondence course from Writer's Digest School or the Writer's School on how to become a children's book author. And the headline was, "We are looking for people to write children's books." And it ran unchanged for decades. And all it did is identify what you wanted to do, who you were. If you wanted, a lot of people crave in the writing sphere, want to be authors, and a lot want to write children's books. It's a maniac. See, every celebrity today has a children's book. People want to write children's books, and that is what hooked them in.
So that headline, so let's call that the control that ran for years and years and years, right?
Yeah.
They would have still been still been testing, but not being able to beat it, right?
Yeah, one of the things, I kind of knew them, and I sort of didn't beg them, but I said, this is great. You want me to? I'd love to take a shot at it, but they said nothing, has ever beaten it. And usually, more often, controls don't last. You do, especially in the digital age, where things move faster. You can beat them, or you can tweak them, or you can try something completely different, and you get it, and you get a new headline that works, and you can see a lift of 10%, 50%, 100% or more. You can double the control. But occasionally there are still classic controls that are very, very difficult to beat and that have long lives.
There's so many things to talk about. Like I've got a few things that I want to cover. I've got there's so many areas. I mean, I've been into
I'm not in a rush. I'm yours for as long as you need me.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, like, I bought every kind of copywriter's kind of book ever. As soon as I got into copywriting, I think I got introduced it from Jay Abraham, because like he was speaking about kind of copywriting, and then I got into kind of Gary Halbert and Gary Bencivenga, and John Carlton, and like kind of to Claude Hopkins, and
Yeah.
basically all of kind of the greats, right? And what's interesting is that it's all similar, but there is a difference in how they each approach kind of how they write kind of the copy themselves, right? And I think there's a process the copywriters kind of just go through to produce a kind of winning piece. Yes. What is kind of your process of kind of how you go through the construction of the copy to make to ensure that it has the highest kind of chance of beating the control?
I'll give this to your listeners and viewers. If they go to bly.com, my site, and click on methodology, there's a link under that page that says, here's how I write copy. And it's listed out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, my process for writing copy. But it starts with immersion in research. Research, and this is said by many people, not just me, is half the job. A lot of people say they do research so they have enough proof, because one way you sell things is you have overwhelming proof that your claims are true. And that's one purpose of research. But the other that is less well known in doing research is in doing research, you come across selling ideas you would never have even considered, and they may serve the basis of a whole new approach. You're not just trying to prove your point, you're trying to also find new ideas, new selling ideas. And so everything, someone once did a survey of the top copywriters, or a lot of copywriters, how much of your time in writing a promotion, a winning promotion, is spent research. And I think it was between 25% and 50%. And certainly that's the case with me. 25 to 50% of my time is research and reading. And
what are you researching? And what are you reading?
You're researching, let's say you're writing a promotion, you're researching the market. For example, you're researching the product. If I have to write a direct mail, or now it's an online promotion for, let's say, an investment newsletter, I tell the client, send me the last 6 to 12 months of issues. And I go through that. I print it out, even though I have it electronically. I print it out. I put it in huge notebooks. I can pull some out and show them to you, and which I've done with clients because I want them to see what I do. And I go through that, I print out. I have my trusty yellow highlighter, and I go through it. And again, sometimes the selling idea for let's say a monthly newsletter of investments or health or business management is in the April issue on page 7, but you wouldn't know that unless you dug into it. So one of the biggest flaws of I don't want to say unsuccessful but copywriters who are not really dedicated to making it work is they don't do enough research. They shortcut that process.
I understand. And I would agree with that 100%, because if you do the research, then you understand the pain points, the hooks, the angles, there's perspectives that kind of haven't been considered yet. There's also kind of some testimonials, which you could kind of start to pull out as headlines for different ads, or kind of the basis of like a specific hook. So yeah, for sure. Spending time on kind of research helps a lot. Have you been using kind of ChatGPT to support the research kind of process?
That is another 2-hour conversation. And I actually have 2 books coming out about writing with AI that I'm doing for my publishers. But the answer is, while I personally never use ChatGPT to write copy, I do use it in several ways to do research. For me, and there's several, but the number one way is when I'm writing a financial promotion, one of the challenges, can we come up with a big idea for my financial promotion? Like I saw one recently from a company I didn't know, and they said, what was it? They said, AI proof your stock portfolio with the blue collar mutual fund. And their idea was that if you invest in companies that are not impacted by AI, their workers operate drill presses, they're dentists or whatever, that AI can't take over for them, they're a good company to invest in. You should own their stock. And that's what we call a big idea. And so if I have a big idea, let's say I decide, I'm making this up, it's not a good one, not a real one. I say, what would happen if tomorrow Ukraine, sent a bomb over Russia and blew up their gas pipelines exiting the country? What would happen to us, the US stock market, the global economy? Is that enough? Is that a big idea for writing a package? So I'll ask ChatGPT to vet, I call it vetting, VETTING. Is that a good idea? ChatGPT, what would happen if that happened? And if ChatGPT comes up with a list of 8 or 9 or 10 coherent points, and I say, it doesn't have to have the details, but it says, I say, this makes sense, then I say, I think I could build a package around this. But on the other hand, if it waffles and it says, well, it's not real, then I don't. So that's my number one use of ChatGPT right now, is what I call big idea, big promotional idea vetting. I do use it for other things, but that's my number one right now.
Yeah, I think for us, we use it to kind of import essentially all of the reviews of a specific a product. You kind of like all the white papers, all the information kind of that clients send us, sales scripts, everything. We just put it basically into ChatGPT and just start to interrogate the data through ChatGPT, because it can just consume all this information. And through that, I find with ChatGPT, it's all about kind of it's actually kind of knowing the question to ask. And that's what experience kind of, that's how experience helps, right? Because experienced people, they ask significantly kind of better questions, right? And I think the question is half the thing. And so the question which you would ask is far superior than the question that someone who's just starting out in copywriting is going to ask, right? It's still ChatGPT. It's still enormously powerful, but it's only as powerful as the person who's using it. And if you're an expert and if you know kind of how to interrogate it, you get far superior kind of outcomes and kind of research from it. Yes, we use that as well, just for the research process and for the brainstorming process. And then we extract it from there. Once you have the big idea, how do you go about the construction of the piece itself?
Here's what I do. If I feel that the big idea is viable, I then do what we talked about earlier. I do intensive research. I say, okay, this is the good direction we're going to try. I do intensive research on all the points I can, and I can go into details, but how can I get proof and backup of all these ideas and claims? The ChatGPT says, if we blew up the Russian gas pipeline, Chicago, Illinois would go dark in 2 days. I find all the proof of everything that it says. So then I have my information. And then what I like to start with is headlines. Can I come up with some really, I hate to use the term because it's so corny, but people say killer headlines. Can you write a killer headline? But I do. I try to come up with great headlines, and lots of them. And I look at them, and then I have an assistant. I write all my own copy, but I have people, a few assistants, and I give it to one of them. Her name is Elise. I say, here are the headlines. What do you think of these? And then I show it to, I have a couple of virtual assistants. I might show it to someone else. And then I'll take the top 3. I'll say to the client, here's what I've come up with for headlines. Here's 3 to 5, and we like the first one. And when the client will either say, yeah, I think you've got it. Let's blow that out and expand that out. Or how about combining number 4 and number 6 instead? So I try to nail the headline down first. Then
when you're doing headlines, sorry, just quickly ask, when you're doing headlines, the headline also has the big idea, which is why it needs to go to the client to confirm it, right? Because you're kind of introducing a new product sometimes, or a new angle for them to construct something that can fit the big idea. Is that right?
Simple answer to that is yes. It may not always explicitly sum up so that the big idea pops out, but it's in there. And so yes, I want them to buy in. I want my client, because I'm freelance, so I'm not the boss. They are. I want them to buy into it. I said, here's my approach to doing this. And once they pick a headline and say, yeah, we like that approach, I write the lead. I write 1 page of the copy. If it's a sales letter or a landing page, sales page, whatever it is, a video sales, VSL video sales letter. I write, a few hundred words of copy. I say, here's the headline, here's the lead. And when they buy into that and we kick it around and we nail it down tight, then we go to the rest of the piece.
And then how much time is spent on the rest of the piece compared to the headline?
I would say the way I kind of break it up is it's a 25 to 50% on the research. Then to write the headline, the lead, and the first draft, is it again like, another 25 or 30 or 40%, and then the rest is spent polishing, fine tuning, and revising.
I know this is a conversation about copywriting. How does the design impact the copywriting? It's like the front covers of the tabloids, right? Or the layout of of kind of the direct mail piece, right? Or actually kind of just getting them just to open kind of the envelope, right? Like that's a part of it too, right? Because if they don't open kind of the envelope, they can't see the copy, right? So how important is the design that's around the copy that you provide a client, like in the performance of that control versus test?
Me being an old school copywriter, we always said back in the direct mail days, I feel like I'm ancient, but back in the direct mail days, that the copy is king. Copy drives it, and the design supports the copy. And the best graphic designers I work with, and I work with a number of them, but the best ones, best 2 or 3 who are my regular go-tos, they agree with this. They say our job is to support your copy. So I write the copy. I don't do a layout of it. Usually, if I need a specific layout of a page, I might do a rough sketch. I don't design it, but I'll do a rough sketch. I'll choose headline and subhead at typefaces so you can see clearly what elements have to be emphasized. I'll put boxes around things. I'll put highlighting, but I don't do a final design. And I say to my clients, your next step is either you have your staff or your favorite freelance or independent graphic designer or digital agency design it, or if you want us to, I'll refer you to my top designer. I have several, but I have one that I work with almost all the time, and she will do it. So after the copy is approved, she then sets it into, and we're doing one of these right today with a series of letters for an attorney. I do a lot of lawyer letters, for like to get you out of drunk driving.
The DUI.
DUI, that kind of thing. And so then it goes to the designer, and she designs it, shows it to me first, and I say, yes, I like that, or this is good, why don't you underline that or whatever. And then when I say, okay, we show the whole thing to the client, and then they give it the once over, and then we're good to go.
When you look at the design that's come back from the designer that's based on the copy which you've sent them inside of a Google Doc or something like that, right? Like it's just a bunch of
I never use Google Docs. I write in Word. Don't say Google Docs to me.
Well, okay. I like Google Docs because it's always online. It's always stored. You hate it? Yeah, fine. It's a personal thing as well. But okay, cool. So they get kind of the Word document, they design it. And then when they come back, yes, what are some of the things which you don't like to see that you tell them, no, fix that? And like, kind of how do you look at it, to make sure that the copy is the focus, not the design? Because sometimes I've noticed that the designers, they can't help but design, and it's hard to find a designer who can be simple and just kind of focus on the copy. Yeah. But so what do you look at just when a landing page comes back, a sales letter comes back?
Well, that used to be a problem for me, but it's not anymore because I only work with Lori and a couple of other designers who are very experienced. There's a direct response designers for print and digital, and it comes about the way I would expect. And they know what I want, and they know what to do. And often they know how to design it better than I do. The place that was sometimes a problem is if I hand over the copy to a client and they say we're going to design it in-house or have our designer do it, and I don't have a choice of designer they use. And then I look at it. Normally, that's not a problem, but it has happened from time to time. It comes back, and I say, this doesn't work, and it's not, I'm not the boss, it's up to them, but I say, here's what I strongly suggest that you consider redoing.
Yeah, great. And just for the audience, like a lot of these old school copywriters started in the direct mail, including who was the guy from like the early 1900s. I've got his book somewhere. He was like one of the first, and he would do
Well, there's Robert Collier,
Robert Collier.
Robert
He has
Collier book.
Yeah, and there was another one that was but this has been going on for over 100 years, right? And the
Well
majority of
over a
that
hundred
time,
years.
yeah. And so copywriting has been around since there's been the print publications. Is that right? Yeah. So since there's
Oh,
been kind of magazines
oh,
or
oh,
newspapers.
yeah. I mean, yes, it really started. Advertising originally started in the colonies in America with old newspapers. In fact, the one of the funny stories I read is Albert Einstein, before he came up with the theory of relativity, earned money as a tutor, and he got business with newspaper advertising.
Mm,
Offering his offer was a free lesson. So this has been
right.
around a
This has
long
been around
time.
for quite a while. And just for the younger people who are listening, just imagine like, so these days it's fine to make an ad, upload it onto Meta and see how it goes. But before the internet, you would have to get the writing done. It'd have to go into kind of the publications, probably have to wait sometimes up to 8 or so kind of weeks. It would then kind of go out, and so like you can't make mistakes in that scenario, right? Like the pressure is so high to make it hit, right? And so when you want to learn about kind of copywriters and kind of copywriting, start with the old school guys because they had to nail it the first time because the production after the copy was constructed was so big, right?
They had to nail it for two reasons. First, because it was expensive, as you said, but secondly, because they had to get it right the first time. But secondly, because it cost a lot of money. If you had a direct mail test, even a small one, and it failed, you're $25,000 in the hole. But if you put up a Facebook ad and it doesn't work, you test it for $1,000, $100 a day for a few days, you haven't lost much. So we
And
had to be,
$25,000 in like the 70s and the 80s and the 60s,
yeah,
right? So that was worth
yeah,
a lot more than it is today as well
yeah.
with inflation.
Yeah, Ken McCarthy, who's sort of like the godfather of doing direct marketing on the internet, he said we knew more because it cost us money.
I remember I was first starting out, I think it was in the late 90s, and I did a direct mail piece and I got like one client from it. But I remember I was like I had to lick all the envelopes and I was doing it like super cheap. And it was still like it was still thousands of dollars. Like, and I was, just like essentially at
I
home licking
I did
envelopes
I
and
did the same thing. I did the
yeah.
same.
And I remember it was so nerve-wracking just to construct a headline because like at the time I do the headline. I do the very best headline I can, and then I have to make a decision. That's the headline I'm going to go with. And then I do the
Yeah,
copy, and that's the copy. And then I have to pick a font. That's the font. And then like kind of the color of the paper, and then the color, and then like the stamp selection, and then like the name and email. Like I hand wrote it because I thought kind of that would have like a higher kind of open rate, right? And there was so much effort just to send the one piece, right? And I think that having that experience in some way shows you how much time that you should be putting into these things, right? Because I think this kind of ability to launch things fast, everyone thinks that they're a copywriter now, and they go, oh, and they'll go into ChatGPT and they'll just ask it like if you like a couple of kind of prompts, and that's not the process, right? The process is like you almost need to think about it like the old school days, just where you want to spend more time and just get more winners, right? Because every time that kind of a person kind of puts something up and it fails, that costs you money and it's opportunity costs and so on. But if you put a little bit more time in the preparation, or a lot more time in the preparation, the performance is better. Yes. What do you
well,
say to
one of
that
the
kind of whole
no, I
perspective?
agree with you. One of the things I did besides direct mail back in the 80s, because I have my engineering background, I wrote a lot of slick color sales brochures for industrial companies, chemical companies, and we agonized over it. Now, if someone's writing a website page on chemical X, they don't agonize over it because they know they can always, change it. But if we were doing industrial brochures, like I had a chemical company that made industrial gases, we would do the brochure. They'd print 3,000 copies of them. It wasn't print on demand. It was regular printing and it was expensive. Once we did that, we're going to have to live with those for 2.5 years before it's time to reprint. You had to be, you had to be pristine. You had to be careful. You had to do it right.
And so I kind of I'm kind of I'm speaking about this point because there's a lot of copywriters out there that are listening right now and just like they just spend more time on the research, yeah, because like it's just such an important kind of area. How does somebody become a great copywriter these days?
I get asked this all the time.
Yeah, I know, but I have to ask you on on this podcast.
There are a number of ways, but there's really only three. There's two primary ways you become a great writer, copy, or anything else. And then there's a couple of ancillary. Number one is I tell people, if you want to be, let's say copy, we'll still copy, but it could be any kind of writing. If you're going to want to be a great writer, let's say writing. If you want to be a great writer, write every day. The more you write, the better you get. You know Malcolm Gladwell's theory about 1,000 hours?
10,000 hours, wasn't it? About 10,000 hours.
1,000 hours gets you decent. 10,000, you say, get you really, really good.
Okay, so 1,000 hours is good to start with then.
Good to start with. So
what's that? 160 hours a month full time into 1,000. What's that? Like 7 months full time. Yeah.
Yeah. But most people don't. When you write, say full time, you're not writing 12 hours, 8 hours a day. So it takes longer than that.
Writing for 1,000.
Writing, not working.
Not writing. Researching, writing.
Well, researching could be considered part of writing.
Okay, so that's included in that. Okay, good. Yes. Great.
Yeah, but so I tell people that the best two ways: you write a lot, and I tell people write every day. I write every day of the year. And number two is read a lot. And in terms of copy, well, for a copywriter, you want to read everything, but you certainly want to read a lot of your copy. It's amazing. I was talking with a health copywriter, who's very experienced. I'd say, did you see this promotion that this company's doing in this style with these emails and landing pages? She goes, oh, I haven't heard of that. I said, how could you not? They're a major. You should be on their list. I was amazed. And I sent them to her, and she said, oh, this is brilliant. I said, but you should know this already. I was nicer about it, but so you read a lot. You read copy. I read all the time. You read books. You read, and people say, one thing that bothers me, people say, what's the last business book you read? Don't just read business books. Read everything. If you're a copywriter, and you don't read fiction, you're missing the boat, because fiction tells you how people think and feel and speak. So I am constantly reading, I'm constantly writing, and then those are the major ones. Write every day, read all the time. And the third one is study copywriting. Become a student of copywriting. I don't mean just reading copy you get, but take a course. Today, that's the one advantage people really do have today. There's so much more education out there, more easily accessible. Now, the negative, the downside, a lot of it is very questionable quality, but before it wasn't that easy to get education. You mentioned the classic books that you bought and read. When I got started as a copywriter in the late 70s, early 80s, and I moved to New York City in the early 80s, I would take the bus down to the used bookstores, the Strand and so forth, and I'd look in the business section. And one day I remember I went there and I found an original hardcover copy, 1920, Scientific Advertising by Claude Hopkins. I clutched it like it was a baby, and I got on the bus and I went home and I locked myself in my apartment and I read it, and it was like I had found treasure. Now you can download it for free online, but there's education of it widely available. When I started, I took a course in copywriting, in direct response copywriting at New York University with a guy named Milt Pierce, who became one of my mentors and a good friend. And I said, thank God I lived in New York City, because you couldn't get those courses.
I remember those days as well. Like even just to find information that was actually kind of helpful was fun. And then especially my kind of copywriting, it was such a niche industry where the people who were good were just doing the work and they weren't talking about the work, right? And so there was no one really educating how to copyright. Like there was only a few over history that were kind of standouts, and so that was really hard. And I think these days, everyone just thinks they know copywriting, but they haven't really done the work yet, right? And so speaking of the work and speaking of understanding copywriting, who would you say are critical kind of authors or copywriters that people should be consuming their books? Yeah. So from, from all the way back when. Yeah. So
Well,
who would you say are like, all right, cool. So these are ones that everyone who wants to write amazing copy should read.
Well, I do have lists on my website, and I can point you to those later, or send you a link. But
And I'll link to these in the show notes as well, by the way, just for everyone who's listening.
yeah, I'll send you a few links. But basically, of the contemporary ones, I do like, and I've become friendly with a younger guy named Ben Settle. I don't know if you know him. He's very good, and he has a completely different approach to copywriting than I do. But I like him. John Carlton is still active. In health copywriting, the queen, maybe she's too sexist to say that, the princess, the ruler is Carleen Anglade Cole. These people are all friends of mine, and she's terrific, and she's, I think, one of the best health copywriters out there. In financial copywriting, subscribe to John Ford's newsletter, the Copywriters Roundtable. He writes a lot for Agora, and he's very good. You're very making good. Me think that I got to put up also on my site a page that updates this, and when I do that, I'll also send you a link to that. But those are some of the ones that you should read.
And they've got some books, have they? Have they got books, or have they just got copy?
Carleen Anglade Cole has a couple of books that are good. John Ford, I think, yes, he has one book that he wrote with Mark Ford of Agora. It's called, now I can't remember, but look at John Ford, Forde. He has a book. There are.
So is it still worth kind of consuming some of the old copywriters these days, or is it just better to just be learning from the new ones?
No, the old ones are better. I'm going to be point blank about that. The great classic works. If I was to them, I could rattle off a list very quickly.
Yeah. Please, like if you could just share some of the top.
I'll do a few
ones.
And you probably have read a lot of these. You have to read, or you should read, Claude Hopkins' Scientific Advertising. You should read Ogilvy on Advertising by David Ogilvy. And you should read anything by Vic Schwab, Schwab, Vic Schwab. I forget the title. It's something advertising. You should read John Caples, his stuff. Rosser Reeves, he wrote a book called Reality and Advertising that is an absolute classic. And those are a few of them.
Yeah, I would say that, as well.
Yeah, if you go, and I'll send you these lists later, but the links later. But I have a list on my site. If you go to the articles page, you'll find there's two articles, the 10 classic copywriting books I think you should read, and 10 more contemporary copywriting books I think you should read.
Perfect. How do you find a great copywriter if you want to work with one? And I know they could contact you for sure, if they're in the finance space and they have the money for it. But just for the general person, right? Who's going to Upwork and posting stuff on all these kind of the freelancer sites. How do you, or what advice would you give people to assess if someone's a good copywriter? If they need to hire someone, say, for example.
The problem with today, it's easy to find a copywriter. There are many more copywriters than there used to be when I started. The problem, though, is you go to a place like Upwork, I don't want to make an overly broad statement. Fiverr and Upwork, I think, is not the way to do it. I ask people, first of all, people can ask me. I'm not really that available anymore. I've got my clients and I'm not looking for more. But if somebody says, Bob, I need someone to write, and they probably can do the same with you, I'm thinking, but Bob, I need someone to write a health promotion, to write an ad on exercise equipment. I'll send them some recommendations, and I'll also send you a list I keep hidden on my site. It's not on a first or second level page. I keep a directory of some of the copywriters that I do think are good, that I like, and I say, here's some. You can go through them and talk to them and make your own deal and evaluate them.
But for people to find, or for people to assess them, yes, is there a way which you would advise someone to assess a copywriter?
Yes.
Like if they're looking for someone?
Yes. A lot of copywriters basically will send you emails saying, I am the top email copywriter in the world. So they're rejected right away. Because if you were the top, you wouldn't say it. Other people would be saying it about you. So that's utter BS. What you do is one way we used to go about doing this, we look at promotions that we thought were really good, and we'd say, are these promotions working? And we'd find out. We'd either ask the marketer, or we'd say we were getting it in the email or the mail 20 times. It must be working. And I would approach the marketer directly and say, yeah, I really like this piece. Did you write this in-house? And if not, who wrote it? We might need somebody to write something like that. Would you mind sharing the name? A lot of them will, some of them won't.
So you will find a good piece and then contact the company and ask them who's the
Yeah.
person who wrote that. Is it in-house or is it someone else? And if it's someone else, that's someone that we could use as well. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and half will share with them, and half will say, no, it's our private resource, and half will say, sure, it's Joe
And if you're
Blow.
doing the research and if you're doing the consumption of all the other information in the market, then you should be able to see some good copy as it comes across. And then
You will. You shouldn't. It's not. You should be able to. You will, and you say, this is good. I like this, and you may go further and say, I'm seeing this again and again, so I know it's working, and then find out. Go on LinkedIn. Let's say it's company X. Go to company X and get the marketing director and say, hey, I was reading your promotion. You keep running it. It must be working. Would you mind sharing with me the name of did you write this yourself? If not, would you mind sharing with me the name of your copywriter? And some will, and some won't. LinkedIn.
And all you can do is ask. And that's literally
the worst they could do is not tell you.
The worst they could do is not tell you. And then for copywriters now, yeah. So I'm sure there's going to be some copywriters who are listening as well. What advice have you got for them on how they can get clients? I mean, it's become fantastic, like in an industry, but before they become fantastic in an industry, they kind of almost need to have an industry to invest in. Like, so what comes first? Is it like the chicken or the egg, right? Like, so how do you?
Well, I'm not trying to sell them anything. Normally when you ask someone like me that, they say, oh, take my course, and it's a $5,000 course. I have a book that I wrote years ago. It's old, but it's a lot of it is still valid. It's called Secrets of a Freelance Writer. If you go on Amazon and buy it, it's only a few bucks, and you buy it used, I don't make any money. So there's no profit motive for me. So that tells you how to get clients. Now, the problem with that book is it's also dated. Everything in there is still valid, but there's new methods of getting copywriting clients. The main one you hear mentioned is outreach. You know what I mean by outreach?
Yeah.
I'm probably going to produce some kind of guide on outreach, but basically you go online and see who you can connect with, who would be a good potential client, and you, as I say, make a connection with them and work that lead, so to speak. Another way to do it is on LinkedIn. I mean, I'm not an expert in LinkedIn, but I do know how to do all these things. And if we had more time, maybe we could do a separate session if you wanted. But LinkedIn, email, outreach, and content marketing.
Yeah. And I would say on that point as well, I think what's interesting about that point is that if you're not getting responses, you're probably not as good of a copywriter as what you might think you are. Because you haven't done the research and you don't know how to get the hot button, right? And then you're the same as everyone else, which means that it's archived immediately, right? So if you want to stand out, the hook has to be good. You need to understand your market. It needs to be short and punchy, and it needs to make it easy to take action, right?
I'll give the number one tip to avoid that on LinkedIn. If you're reaching out to someone on LinkedIn, don't start with say, hey, Bob, I do social media. I can help you with your social media. Don't pitch me. Don't start the relationship off by pitching. Build a relationship. And we can talk about how to do that if you want. But for example, if I were to do it for me, I'd say, hey, I got your email on investing in Elon Musk's new AI company. I thought that was pretty good. If I could show you ways, and then I might say something like, oh, if I could show you ways to improve the metrics, better conversion, more subscription sales, would you be interested in taking a look? Or I might say, hey, I do a lot of work in stocks, and I've had success with high-tech stocks and even AI stocks. May I send you some samples of my work? That's how I would start off.
May I send you some samples of my work? Yeah, sure. I'd love to see the things that someone else is doing in my industry, right? Like that's the best thing, isn't it?
Or if you don't, even something as simple as, may I send you a free information kit on my copywriting services? And if they say yes, I have a PDF document, which if you ask me for it, I'll be happy to send it to you. You can share it with people. It's a 15-page PDF that is a package of information about my copywriting services. It includes a cover letter, client list, testimonials, articles, samples, et cetera, et cetera.
And every single page, I assume, on that document has been meticulously copywritten, structured well, so that it's all consumable, right? Like it's like a 15-page sales letter, but it's not a sales letter.
Sort of, yeah. It's sort of like that. Although the first 3 or 4 pages actually are, a long copy sales letter, which I've always used.
Yeah. So even long copy. And let's finish on this point. When do you use long copy these days? In what scenario does long copy work in today's world?
Well, again, I got to send you some links to stuff, because there's an article on my Bly.com on the articles page on copy length. And I have a tool called the copy length grid. When do you use long copy? When do you not use long copy? And basically, you use short copy when it's a casual purchase that doesn't make much of a difference to the person, and when there's no emotion involved, and when there's not a lot to teach or explain. You use long copy when it has an emotional component, when it is there's a lot of information that the buyer that needs to make a decision. So if I'm promoting a dietary supplement for joint pain, that's going to be long copy, because I have to begin with, I have to describe the ingredients. What are the benefits? What do the clinical studies say about it? That takes a lot of words. On the other hand, if I'm selling, I'm looking for something over here. If I'm selling this pocket calculator for sale was $20, now $8. You don't need a lot of copy.
Headlines of headline. I love it.
Yeah. And having joint pain, although I don't have that particular ailment, can be a very emotional thing. But picking out a calculator, not so much.
Great. Bob, this has been a great conversation. I love copywriting. I would say like if somebody ever asked me, what's my core strength? I would say that I've spent so many hours in copywriting that's my core skill. And I think that is the skill that any amazing or fantastic kind of marketer should be really becoming excellent at, because it's at the core across everything. I highly kind of recommend the book, the Copywriter's Handbook. This is something I bought. I have bought for everyone in my team. And I just appreciate the conversation today. It's such a good conversation. But how do people connect with you?
If they want to hear from me on a regular basis, they should go to my last name is Bly, B-L-Y. My website is Bly.com. Very easy to remember.
BLY.com?
www.bly.com. 3-letter
you got a 3-letter domain name. First of all, that's just cool. Side note.
Well, you know what? I was late to the internet, but I was early to reserve the domain name. So I was able to grab it, and you can't get them anymore. So, but I say go to bly.com/reports, REPORTS, and you can download a library of 4 of my special reports for free. We sell them elsewhere on the site, so the $29 each. So we sell these 4 for $116. You can get them free, and you can opt into my e-list, and you'll hear from me every week with tips and things that'll be useful to you. And you can, no cost, and you can unsubscribe at any time.
Highly recommended for anyone who wants to be a better marketer, a better copywriter, a more successful entrepreneur. Yeah, because kind of copywriting is at the core of everything that we do. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been a great conversation, Bob.
It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for listening to the Growth Manifesto podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. For more episodes, please visit growthmanifesto.com/podcast. And if you need help driving growth for your company, please get in touch with us at webprofits.io.